Donald Trump was only able to distract people from the Epstein files for so long before independent media returned to what is clearly the biggest corruption story of this administration. It's not surprising that attention has shifted back now that Trump has effectively backed off Greenland after surrendering to Europe. What is surprising is that MAGA figures have started talking about Epstein again, especially Joe Rogan, who just openly acknowledged what many of us have known for a long time about Donald Trump, Epstein, and particularly Ghislaine Maxwell, making this cover-up much harder for Trump to contain. This all traces back to a House Oversight Committee hearing yesterday, where Republicans tried to redirect attention toward Bill Clinton. Instead, new information about Ghislaine Maxwell emerged, which set off Rogan's comments, what he's admitting, what he's repeating, and what's now leaking out. And it starts with Robert Garcia and the broader context of how we got here and why what Rogan said matters so much.
Taylor Greene on this committee reported that Trump told her that he wanted to continue his cover-up because, quote, my friends will get hurt. Donald Trump is leading a White House cover-up right now of the Epstein files. And we all know that Epstein himself said that Donald Trump was his best friend for over 10 years. And it is shameful, illegal, and unconstitutional that the Department of Justice has released 1% of the files. 1% of the files. Where is the pressure to get Pam Bondi to release the files? Instead, you're focused, and the committee's focused, on whoever you perceive to be your enemies, and the enemies of Donald Trump. Because let's be clear. We want to talk to President Bill Clinton. We want him to answer our questions. We also want Ghislaine Maxwell to answer our questions. We also want to understand why Pam Bondi refuses to release all the files. 1% of the files have released. Millions have been left. No publications for weeks. That is a crime. And so this White House cover-up continues every single day that the files are not released. And yet, where are those calls, Mr. Comer? You're saying they're complying. That is both a lie and shameful.
So at this point, it's clear that Donald Trump is involved in a cover-up, and I don't think that's even debatable anymore. No one is seriously confused about the decade-long relationship between Donald Trump, his close association with Ghislaine Maxwell, and the fact that he flew on private jets with her without Jeffrey Epstein present. That means they were spending time together independently. Maxwell being Epstein's right-hand woman. And now we know even more. According to Robert Garcia, Mar-a-Lago functioned as a hub for Epstein's trafficking network. So yes, I don't think anyone is still questioning whether Donald Trump was deeply and directly involved in this trafficking ring or whether he is actively leading a cover-up, not just in his current administration, but during his previous one as well. That is exactly what Trump does not want people focusing on. It's also why he is desperate to keep Ghislaine Maxwell from speaking out, even though she is now set to do so. And Trump doesn't want Republicans breaking ranks either, which is why he continues to attack Thomas Massie. How Trump went after Massie matters here, especially before we get to what Joe Rogan said, because all of this is now connected as MAGA itself begins to fracture.
The reconciliation plan, do you want that?
I'd like to see it. It's hard when you have a majority by 3. You know, it's hard because you have a guy like this loser, Massie. He's a real loser. And you have other guys that just automatically vote. No, Rand Paul. I always got along well with Rand Paul, but he's always, no vote. Someday you're going to have to explain it. Some psychiatrist ought to go see him. Even a really great vote, they just vote no. I don't know what it is. I think they get good publicity. They really don't. They hurt the country because if you're voting no, then you're giving the Democrats and socialism and communism, frankly, because you have communists, frankly. I mean, when you look at some of the plans being put out by them, these are communists.
To Donald Trump, Thomas Massie is a loser simply for standing up and clearly saying that maybe it's time for accountability for the pedophile protectors. But the way Trump attacked Massey is important, especially in light of what Joe Rogan later pointed out and what he revealed about Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Trump wrapped his criticism of Massey, whom we know he deeply resents because of the Epstein files, inside a broader claim that Republicans who oppose his deficit-blowing legislation hate America. That's the tactic. Shift the focus, redirect the blame, and give himself an easy escape. It's the same move Trump pulled the first time the Epstein files were supposed to be released. Ever since, he's been trying to distract and deflect. And that's exactly what Rogan admitted he believes is happening, and why this is going to become a real problem for Trump around February 8th. But before we get into why, listen to what Rogan had to say.
Well, it's going to go on for a long time, I suspect. I mean, they said they released them, but what did they release?
No, they're still not all out yet.
But what did they release?
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. The whole thing's weird.
It reminds me of that Onion article where they're like, "Oh, CIA realizes they've been using a black highlighter this entire time." Like, it's like that. It's like, oh, okay, you just blacked out pages,
redacted the shit out of everything.
Yeah.
It's like, what did they release? Did they release something recently?
No, they haven't released anything in a minute. They had that initial release where everything was blacked out, and it was that picture of Winnie the Pooh, which was hilarious.
But isn't there talk about some new releases that are happening soon?
Have they? It feels like everything's been drowned out by everything else been going on with like the Somalians and the ICE shooting. It feels like that's completely drowned out. Anything about it?
I think some of that's on purpose.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, 27 minutes to go up.
Joe Rogan is finally admitting something important, even if he doesn't fully accept his own role in it. Donald Trump uses culture war stories to distract from bigger scandals, and Rogan now openly acknowledges that Trump pushes things like Somali fraud or ICE crackdowns to shift attention. The problem is that Rogan himself was deeply involved in amplifying these narratives, essentially acting as free propaganda. He's realizing he's a pawn, but he's still playing along. This directly ties to Ghislaine Maxwell and the Epstein files. Every time a deadline approaches, Trump rolls out a new distraction. On the very day the Epstein files were supposed to be released, the focus suddenly shifted to Greenland and a misleading right-wing fraud story. Now there's another key date coming up, February 8th, when the House Oversight Committee plans to depose Maxwell. As that date gets closer, Trump will almost certainly launch another major distraction: threats, tariffs, foreign drama, something big and loud. Rogan even admits Trump feeds these stories to the media, yet he still falls for them. That's the issue. Knowing it's a distraction and still promoting it makes Rogan part of the cover-up. Trump's attacks on people like Thomas Massey or Marjorie Taylor Greene fit the same pattern. Silence anyone who threatens to refocus attention on Epstein. The cover-up is ongoing, and we're going to keep calling it out. Melanie Stansbury also made a strong point on this recently, and her comments deserve more attention.
What I've heard here this morning in front of this committee is exactly why the American people hate politics. Because the American people don't care if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, if you're an independent, whether you vote or you don't. They want the Epstein files and they want justice and accountability. And they don't give a damn whether or not it's Democrats or Republicans or who is implicated. They want accountability. And that is what the survivors are asking us for. They are asking us to do our jobs, to make good on the promises that we made them when they came and met with us, and to actually, in good faith, conduct an investigation. Now, I always think it's important to pull back the curtain for the American people about what happens in these committees. And I was not shocked and surprised, but I think it's important to note that when I stepped out of the committee a few moments ago, the press were huddled on the Republican side of this committee room to take statements from the Republicans. They're not out in the kind of like neutral area. They're standing outside the Republican door so that after this vote is taken, our Republican colleagues can walk out and make a statement to the press. Now, I think that that's important to note for the public here, because this is not about true accountability. Because if this was actually about getting to the bottom of this case and actually holding individuals accountable for the crimes that were committed by Jeffrey Epstein, by Ghislaine Maxwell, by the associates, and the many, many people who are implicated in this case, what would be happening right now in this committee is that Pam Bondi and DOJ officials would be sitting right there on the witness panel answering questions under oath. Because they are breaking the law. They are not complying with our subpoena. They are not complying with the Epstein Transparency Act. And on the day, the final deadline, that they were supposed to release their final explanation about why they may have redacted some files, and in fact they have, as has been stated many times, only released less than 1% of the files.
It's distraction after distraction. And that's the whole point. That's exactly what they're trying to achieve, but it only works if we don't connect the dots. As Gavin Newsom said yesterday while talking about Greenland, Donald Trump was never actually going to do this. He's weak, insecure, and lacks any real strength. He was never going to follow through. But what does matter is what happens behind the distraction. Trump wasn't going to invade Greenland, but his threat still caused serious, lasting damage to our alliances. That's why we have to keep the full picture in mind and call it out every time. And we absolutely will on this show. If you want to support that, as always, hit the subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.